We're going to take a look at using Enroute to create output files for a BSE skill machine. So first thing we'll do is create a little file here, and we're going to use a logo from UCF as our kind of focal point of the design. So let's come here and go to pictures, and I was able to find a little bitmap of UCF shield, and so I thought this might make a nice sign. Of course, any logos you might use have to follow appropriate copyright laws when it comes to selling products or making money with it. So this is just for demonstration purposes. But what we're going to do is we're going to use vectorizing to turn this from a picture into a contour that we can cut on a machine. So let's come here, and to do that we're going to go to the draw menu. Any design is going to happen here in the draw and transform. We're going to go down to vectorize, and I'll start off using enhanced corners, or enhanced curves, excuse me. And if I come in here and I look at this, you see it does a pretty nice job on everything. It does kind of round off a lot of these little corners, but other than that, it does a nice job of giving me a line between where the contrast of colors occurs. I do see that these internal colors didn't separate, but sometimes you can adjust things with shading and contrast to make that happen. It just has to be a certain difference in color or contrast situation. Now the other way I can do this is I'm going to come here, and this time I'm going to use my toolbar button, and I'm going to use enhanced curves, enhanced corners. And when I have enhanced corners, I can use some sliders here to kind of filter out noise and to give myself sharper edges. If I zoom in on this one, I can see it does a nice job as well, and it gives me some sharper corners here. And I think that in this case, that's more the overall look I'm going for. So I'm going to use this little section right here, and I'll ungroup this and delete this part. Now I'm going to go and look at my plate size here. I haven't really paid attention to that yet, and it's kind of a big one here. I'm going to switch that to a 24 by 24 inch plate. And we'll say it's going to be 0.75 MDF or some other kind of 0.75 material. And if that turns out not to be the case, let me know later, and we can revise this thickness. But a BSE does a surface at bottom of plate, which means we're going to use the top of the spoil board as the 0, and anything above that will represent above 0, and everything below that will be below 0. So any through cuts will be just slightly below 0, and anything else should be above 0. Oh, that's the orientation there of the plate. So we're going to hit OK now, and I'm now just going to reduce the size of this a little bit. Looks like I have some snaps on over here that might be restraining my ability to just scale that. And now I've got those off. And if I hit Control and 5 from the number pad on the keyboard, it will center whatever I've hit in the center of the material. So I'm going to hit Control 5 there, and now we've got this UCF logo right in the middle here. Now what I'm going to do is select just the outer part of this, and I'm going to create a texture that's going to go from a border to this text, and this logo will be kind of raised in the center, and the border will be around the outer edge. So now I'm going to actually create the border, and I'll go to the Draw Rectangle tool, where I could go up here to the Draw menu. Anytime I want to construct something, I'm going to use that Draw menu, and I'm going to choose a, let's say, 22.5 by 22.5 rectangle, and I can precisely place this, or I could allow myself to just use that. Let's see, that was a little bit too much here. I'm not sure what exactly I did there in terms of spacing, so I'm just gonna, I thought it should be 0.75 off, but I just applied it and then have it create a little border there. And if I wanted to, I can make a thicker border there, a thinner border there, or put some type of radius or inverted radius on the corners. I'm just going to go with a straight edge there. Now kind of eye this up relative to the overall size of the part. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add, I need to create a texture, and I don't want my texture to cut into my logo. So I'm going to add 1 or 2 outlines here to help me give a little bit away from the logo and put a border around it, and give me a place I can apply a texture. So let's do this by coming here and going to the outline tool, and I'm going to do a 0.375 outline. I'm going to zoom in here and see if I like the thickness of that. Maybe even do a 1/2 inch outline. And then outside of that, I'm going to first go ahead and apply this. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to do an outline that I'm going to use as a border to help, or a mask to help determine where the texture is going to apply. So one more contour will allow me to create a toolpath mask area. And I'm actually going to select this and the outer border and go here and do this at one time and say 0.25 inside rounded. And this new green line, this is going to be my mask to create a texture. So I've got a few different contours on screen here that I'm going to now cut with. So before I do that, I need to go to my tool library, and the two tools here I'm going to use are a V-Groove tool. I'm going to sort this by color to allow me to see it. A V-Groove tool, and instead of a standard just tool that looks like a conic tool, which is a true point on the taper, I'm going to use a taper tool that has a slight diameter on the bottom, but that way I can use it to clear out material. So we're going to call this tool 90V. I have 90VT here, so I'm just going to rename that 90V and hit save. Now we're going to look for the 3/8 tool, and for now we'll use 3/8 down, but there's no 3/8 down. All right, so now we just have 3/8 down. All right, now we're going to hit save here and close. So we'll see how we can do with these two particular files. Now for Rapid Texture, which is part of the Pro version, I'm going to actually start create a seed contour here, and I'm going to go to the Rapid Texture capability, and I don't really need to worry about panel size here. I'm going to make sure overlap is 0 because I'm going to click on those inline outline I created, and that now tells me where my toolpath is going to mask. It's going to mask inside that area. Now I have a 90-degree V-Groove tool. I'm going to use a few settings here I've used a few times just to create a nice effect. We'll go with 0.4 here, 0.4 here, and 0.25 for my Z depth. And I have randomize checked and noise checked, which means it's just going to be able to have each line move in its own random manner. When I hit apply, I can see that the toolpath was created and it goes back and forth. It's moving in the X, Y, and Z axis between these inner and outer border. Now I'm going to come to the side view. I'm going to hit F2 to bring up the Precision Input Center, and I'm going to hit the Move tool here, and I'm going to say, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and just make this go a little bit down from the top, and I can do that just by selecting that handle and dragging. And I'm going to say minus 0.25 for my final depth. This way my letters will be raised a little bit from the, or the outer border will be raised a little bit from the texture. That's why I moved that top part down just a little bit. But now we have minus 0.25 as my minus Z axis position. All right, so now we have our text where we want it. All right, so now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select my inner border here, or my inner contours. And we're going to apply a toolpath here, and this is going to be an island fill toolpath. We use our 3/8 down, and if I have a strategy that already saved, I can reuse it, but in this case I'm going to be doing a little bit of a new one here, so we're just going to go ahead and create this from scratch, and then I can save it and reuse it again later if I want. So I'm going to use a 3/8 down for my end mill, and then go to my taper tools and use 90V as my taper tool. All right, we're going to try a depth of 0.25. Let's put some feeds and speeds, and we're going to output this in metric, but we're going to just put some values here. Let's say 450. And if you see these values and they're out of line with something you want to run, just tell me the different ones and I'll re-output the file. let's just say 300 here. All right, and the last one we'll do the same thing. 18,000 here for the RPMs. All right, so now I would, if I want to reuse this later, I'd save this as save as 3/8 down fill with 3D clean, and maybe 90V. So that tells me now what this strategy is, and I can always come back in here and just reuse the strategy without having to type all this stuff in there. One thing I want to do here is I want to make sure this is a 3D clean pass. And when you're cutting this, you want to use a sharp point 90V, not something that's going to leave a diameter like for maybe ACM materials, because you want it to be a sharp point to get good detail. All right, now I need to resave this. All right, now I'm going to hit apply and look and see if I like how this looks. Now, because of my depth there, it is actually using a lot of my taper tool to do some cleanup. You know, if I wanted to kind of adjust this a little bit, I could maybe say 0.3 for my depth. It updates all three at the same time, and that way, at least in some areas, you get rid of a little bit of that. But if we had a 1/4" tool, that might go a little bit better. So if I come here and say I'm going to use the 1/4 down, and I'll get rid of that hyphen there here before I send it to you. But now we're able to use the toolpath to clean it, to take care of a lot more of that. So if I hit F9, it'll show me what's going to cut and what's going to be left raised. And so I'm just going to, for this example, and it won't take too long to cut these areas. I mean, it'll take a few moments, but it shouldn't take that long. And then I'm going to now select all these contours, which go back and forth, and they were already grouped together. I'm going to go to my engrave toolpath. Again, since I'm not sure, I'm using specific tools here. I'm not going to use an existing strategy. So I'm going to say 0.25 depth here, but I'm really going to hit follow contour, and that's going to turn my geometry into a toolpath. All right, so there's my feed right here and my toolpath. I'm going to hit apply, and I'll go ahead and regroup that. I just do that so I could select it again easier later on if I wanted to. And now I'm going to select this contour and this contour of the border. I'm going to apply the same engrave toolpath, but I'm going to make it a 3D engrave internal. So that's going to clean up around the outer edge of this part and clean up the edge between where the texture ends and the graphic begins. All right, now of course if I don't have a piece of material that's a 24 by 24 and I'm cutting this out of a bigger material, then I need to come here and create that geometry as well. Put that at 0, 0. And we would want to come here and use whatever tool we're going to use to do this fill, which is currently the 1/4" down. We might use, or actually let's just go ahead and use a 3/8 routing offset to do the cutout. So I'll come here and choose an existing strategy. 0.76 will be our final depth. Let's come here and change some of this information in this particular strategy to reflect our current job. So I'm going to change this tool to the 3/8 down. All right, we have an entry exit parameter in here, and we're also using a final pass. So we're just going to cut through the material by 0.01, and that leaves 0.03 as well for that final pass. All right, so there's my entry exit plunge. If I come here to the side view, I can see it's going to go almost all the way through in the first pass, and it should just go slightly through the material. All right, now I'm going to select all this and hit Control 1. That's going to put it just inside the plate. And what I tend to do sometimes for a BSE is to fit the plate. Actually, I wanted to fit plate to selection here. All right, so this contour is right at 0, 0. This way, wherever you define your home position, you're just going to cut this real close to your home position. So I think that's one way to do it. Of course, you could still have a 4x8 sheet on there if you wanted to. And we're actually going to flip the Y and put it in its upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner with the driver. At least that's how it would work with the XNC driver. But again, I'm going to select this contour and say fit plate to selection, and let's do it like that. All right, so this is what our part's going to look like. Let's come here and do a little simulation. All right, so we're going to order this so that we do our engrave first, then the island fill, and then the cutout. So we can order this by, as long as strategy is the highest priority, we can order this by the type of toolpath. Then as a secondary thing, you know, we can say we want to do the 3/8 or the 90 degree before we do the other two. You know, that looks good as well. So I'm going to update this. Go ahead and check the sort order and make sure that it's got a shortest as the sort order. That should make things cut the fastest. And now let's look at our plate. I'm going to hit Control and right click to zoom out a little bit. I want to see this as the lower left-hand corner of the preview here. And let's go to the first tool change, our first tool lift. We can see that the first thing it's doing is the engrave toolpath. If I want to step through it, I can do that, or I can say go to the next tool change. All right, now we're gonna play all. Actually, it looks like it skipped something there, so let me hit undo and just let it play the whole thing out here. Well, this is actually just gonna let us make sure that we like the way all the little parts look. And you know, like I said, it's going to take a few moments here to clear some of this out, but because we're using that little detailed tool, it's going to look nice and crisp, the edges on this part. What might help it look a little better is if before you cut this part, if you were to come here and maybe paint the top of it black, and then let the MDF be the regular MDF color, then you'll get a little bit of a more of a two-tone effect. UCF's black and gold anyway, so and this is just one kind of texture. I mean, we could change this texture here to be just about anything. Looks like I flipped it around a little bit. All right, I'm just using my control and right click to move that around. So you know, we can change this texture to look a lot of different ways, but this one looks good and shouldn't take too long to cut with that nice separation or spacing between each of the passes. Sometimes textures can take a long time if you make them do too many passes. And you know, we could have added some other contours here and reversed what cuts and what gets left raised, but thought this would look fine. So if you have any questions about that design, make sure to let me know. Now we're going to hit done here. All right, and we're going to create the output for these files. So first thing we're going to do is go to the setup menu, and we have the rover skill here. We're going to go to the tool changer, and it doesn't matter where they are really. You just want to make sure that the tools you're going to use are in here somewhere. All right, so we're going to come here and use, oh, sorry, we're already there, rover skill. I just want to add those three tools. So let's go down the list here. We're going to add the 1/4 inch down. Three-eighths down. And all the way down here at the bottom, the 90V. So these are the tool names we're looking for. And as as I said, I'll change that one tool name in a moment just to say 1 4 down. All right, now we're going to go to, or excuse me, not the driver file, but the output file, and make sure that we have the right driver selected, which we do. I'm not going to change the toolpath order or anything. I'm going to do everything. Well, it actually changed a little bit on me, so let's come here, and I just did a little testing a second ago, so it moved things around a little bit. So we're going to put that down here. Strategy is going to be engrave, island fill offset. Tool order is going to be 90 degree, then 1/4 down the 3/8. Now we're going to make sure that the object order is shortest. All right, all that is done. Now we're going to say to file, and we're going to call this UCF and create the output file. Now we're also going to come here and let's go back here to the driver setup, and we're going to go through this and choose the CIX driver now. And this time I'm not going to worry about adding those to the output, because when you go to use a driver, I'm going to make sure that we have the same order here, which we do. When you use a driver and it doesn't have the tools in the tool changer, then it's just going to ask you, do you want to put it? So we're going to say UCF. All right, and this is going to be the CIX driver, and it's telling me it's not in the turret. So that's okay, because you're just going to use the tool name anyways. So we're going to get rid of the underscore there, and it's just going to look for the correct tool name. So there's our two files. Now we can go here to this backplot program, and we can open to UCF.xnc. You can see how much bigger the CIX file is than the XNC file. And this is going to actually show us this output. Now we do some subtraction with the plate and the Y to flip the orientation. But if you wanted to see it properly, you can actually come here and just change your Y orientation. And actually positive is down here. So we want to change those two things to preview this file. And if we looked at the quad view, you can see that here's all the little entry exits and the plunge rates and everything. So it's a good way to check this out. Now we can come here also and go to statistics. It's showing us that the maximum we're going to raise above the plate is 25.4 inches, or 1 inch. And the Z says 5 millimeters into the material, but that's just because of this line of code right here, which says Z05, and need to find a way to get Backplot not to recognize that. But if we do go down here to the bottom of the code and look up the 3/8 down tool, we'll see that it's plunging. It's going from the safe position above the material down to 19.05, which is the material top. It's 0.75 material. Then it's plunging down to 0.7 above 0. All right, so that's the first pass and doing its thing. Then it's coming around here on the second pass, and make sure I didn't have tool comp turned on in there. Didn't intend to. Okay, no. All right, then in the second pass, it's going to a positive 0.254, so just slightly through the spoil board. And that's what the second pass is going to do. I don't believe we can read the CIX file. So these are the two file formats and an example of how we went about making this sign.